The train arrived in Moscow. Even though the trip was a work trip, I felt some joy. I worked as an electrician for 7 years since graduating from technical school and returning from the army at 20. Now I am 27 years old. I didn't think about why I didn't change my field of activity. After all, everything worked out well. My clients are always happy with my work, and one of them, having decided to experiment with another company while constructing a bathhouse, turned out to be the culprit of its fire. As a result, he decided to expand his business to Moscow. Although I am little interested in the quality of his products, he is always willing to pay for the work done, which makes me a happy performer. When he offered me to do the installation in a new outlet, I initially refused. However, after several weeks of silence, I realized that he was serious about working and was ready to do anything to convince me of this. We agreed to pay for expenses, accommodation, and transportation. And I agreed. I didn't need Moscow at all. Well, that's it, I just don't feel like it. Everything was great for me in Vologda, great. Work, a beautiful wife, and lots of fun activities. What else do you need? My wife is young, slim, with long legs. She's just a cutie. What else do you need for a happy life? I'll be bored without my wife. That's why I initially invited Lyuba to go with me on a business trip, but she flatly refused. She complained that her mother was elderly and needed care, and that her boss at work was strict. He definitely wouldn't let her go for a whole week. Kostya, my client, transferred funds to me to cover expenses, accommodation, and travel for 1 week. I was amazed at the generosity of this amount. I wondered how much a week's stay in a modest hotel on the outskirts of the city would cost. After some research on the internet, I found an option for housing near my future place of work. Although it was a modest room with a bed that Natalia rented out, I saved a significant amount. Although she didn't have a separate bathroom, air conditioning, or TV, I was quite comfortable. After all, the most important thing was the amount of money saved. True. On the first day, straight from the train, I headed to Natalia's apartment. The house was really old, and the smell of smoke and the closed-in feeling in the entryway immediately hit my nose. However, when I got to her apartment, the atmosphere there was cozy and calm. A woman met me at the threshold. She was of medium height and plump. Her figure was perfectly feminine and gentle. Her voice sounded very pleasant. "Sorry, Natalia, for arriving so late. But I had some things to do," I said, entering the apartment. Natalia smiled and answered, "Don't worry, Kirill, I understand everything. How do you like the apartment?" I looked around and said, "It's very cozy here." "Thank you. I hope that I will not cause you any inconvenience with my stay." Natalia just smiled in response and said, "Don't worry, everything is fine. If you have any requests or questions, do not hesitate to contact me." Her voice was so pleasant that it seemed as if we had known each other forever. Such people are kind in themselves, and not only when it is convenient. Before going to bed, we decided to drink tea and began to talk more actively. Natalia shared her whole life with me. One evening, she turned out to be a real fatso, not leaving a minute for a pause between stories. To be honest, I wasn't that interested, but I listened out of politeness. I noticed a couple of interesting things in her story. It seemed that her husband had left her a year ago, leaving behind a nice dowry in the form of a bunch of debts. All the loans were in her name, and she thought it was okay since they were married. So they bought this apartment, a car, and all the appliances. Now she has to work 2 jobs and rent out a room in her apartment. The next 2 days were monotonous. Work, home, work, home. Tired and in a bad mood. We barely found time to talk. On the 3rd day, I noticed that I started looking at my neighbor differently. My eyes lingered on her more often when she passed me. It was voluntary. But something inside me made me do it. Her friendly voice sounded more and more attractive. And she looked more and more delightful. Of course, I understood what was happening to me. On the 4th day, Natasha accidentally deceived her t-shirt. When she washed the dishes, the thin fabric stuck to her skin. I couldn't help but notice this wonderful moment when she hurried to her bedroom. I fell asleep with difficulty that evening. The image of the mistress of the house stood before my eyes. The fifth day, or rather evening, passed similarly to the first. But in short, today Natalia was wearing a short skirt. That night I couldn't fall asleep for a long time. The apartment was unusually quiet. Every rustle echoed in the empty space. I decided to go to the toilet. On the way to my room, I looked into Natalia's room and was stunned by what I saw, a beautiful sight. The woman was sleeping on her back, hugging the blanket in her sleep. Some madman was fussing over me. I thought to myself, a beautiful woman is lying in the next room. I made up my mind and looked into Natalia's room. She was lying in the same position. For some reason, I wanted to cuddle up to this beauty. When suddenly her body moved. Natasha rolled over onto her stomach and found herself facing me. If only she wouldn't open her eyes, I thought. And she opened them. Natalia looked at me for a few seconds. She couldn't understand for a long time whether it was a dream or reality, having realized the reality. She suddenly jumped up and shouted, "What do you want?" I flew into my room like a meteor, closing the door behind me. A second later, she fell silent. But the sound was still in my ears. I listened to the sounds. Footsteps and the click of a switch were heard in the apartment. She went to the toilet. I should probably apologize to her in the morning. And she sank into the blanket so awkwardly that she would be afraid to show herself to her. I tried to fall asleep, hoping that the next day would bring relief. In the morning, we ran into each other in the hallway. The landlady, as always, wished me a good morning and behaved as if nothing had happened during the night. I wanted to apologize to her, but I didn't know what to say. Thoughts appeared in my head. After all, this doesn't happen every day. I was at a loss. I thought about what to say to Natalia all day, but nothing sensible came to mind. In the evening, during dinner, I forced myself to utter a word of apology. "Natalia, I would like to apologize to you for yesterday. I didn't want to scare you, and I am really ashamed." Natalia smiled well-naturedly and looked at me kindly as if it had been just a small mistake for which there was no need to apologize. "Okay, I apologize," she simply said. Well, that's it. Mission accomplished. It seemed that my internal torment ended there. In the evening, Natalia was in the same room again. The feeling of guilt inside had completely passed. Despite her, there is no need. And when I walked past Natalia's room along the corridor, I tried not to look inside, but she called out to me, "Kirill, come in to see me for a minute." "What happened?" I asked, peering through the door. "Come in." "Don't be afraid," I entered carefully. Natalia was lying on the bed, crossing her legs. Still in the same ill-fated leg. "Kirill, my dear. Tell me, what did you want from me last night?" "Sorry, I didn't quite understand." "You are a nice young man. I understand everything. You could have just said, 'I am a lonely woman, could I refuse you?'" I was surprised by Natalia's words. "I beg your pardon, but how do you imagine this?" I shrugged my shoulders in embarrassment, as if to say, "Excuse me, but can I?" I didn't have time to finish speaking when she interrupted me. "Can I, Kirill? Can you do everything?" I was shocked when I heard that. "I mean, you can't," I clarified. "Of course you can, Kirill. But what's so unclear about that?" These words were enough for me to rush to bed from her. Like a lion rushing for its prey. I don't know how long we were carried away by each other, but it was already light outside. When she patted me on the shoulder, she said, "That's it, Kirill, let's go to bed. Otherwise, I won't be able to get up in the morning." I thought that Natalia and I would sleep together on her bed. But, unfortunately, she sent me away. "Sorry, Kirill, but I like to sleep alone." I fell asleep instantly. The sleep of a baby. In the morning, I didn't meet Natalia in the apartment. There was only a note on the table. "Hello, Kirill. I'll be at work until late today. If you move out today, leave the keys on the table and the door will simply slam shut. The train to Vologda left this evening. I needed to travel with half of the money I earned. I decided to leave Natalia. I got it for free anyway. Next to the money, I left the keys and a note saying, "Goodbye, Natalia. Please accept this modest token of my gratitude to you. Thanks again for the night and morning."